Let me start my talk with a brief biography of the Birdman of India, and Madam has given a brief introduction about the biography of Birdman, Dr. Salim Ali, but I'll explain a bit more. And then I will discuss the issue of the conservation of wetland birds in India, citing some few case studies which I've worked across this last 15, 20 years. Dr. Salim Ali was born in the year 1896 into a prosperous, close-knit Bombay family. He was the youngest of 10 children. In his early age, he lost his parents. Often at early age, he was brought up by his maternal uncle, Amruddin Tyabji. His flamboyant uncle, Amruddin Tyabji, was Salim Ali's childhood hero. When Salim was 10 years of age, his uncle Amruddin presented him Desi Agan. One day, young Salim shot a strange-looking sparrow, which you can see on the right side of the screen photograph, the cartoon. When he showed this sparrow to his uncle could not explain why the bird had on its neck. His uncle suggested young Salim to take the bird to the BNHS. There, Aaron said, at BNHS, an Englishman, W.S. Millard, identified it as a yellow-throated sparrow. And it was the turning point of the young boy. Struck young Salim Ali remained hooked on birds for entire life. And W.S. Millard took the young boy to the society's vast stuffed collection of birds. That was the turning point for Salim Ali to get into birds. And Dr. Salim Ali's early education was at St. Xavier College in Mumbai. In 1926, at the newly opened Natural History section in the Prince of Wales Museum, Mumbai, now it is called as Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangralaya. He was hired as a guide lecturer. And after 2 years he spent at the museum, he took a leave to study in Germany under Professor Erwin Stresemann at the Natural History Museum of Berlin. In Berlin, Salim Ali made a great acquaintance with many of the major German ornithologists of the time, including Bernhard Rensch, Oscar Heinfoth, Rudolf Drost, and Ernst Mayr. The photograph on the top right is Ernst Mayr photograph. Professor Ernst Mayr photograph. He's a very renowned ornithologist. Where Dr. Salim Ali gained a great bird ringing experience in a Heligoland bird observatory situated on a small island on the northern sea of Germany. It is a cartoon sketch shown in the middle, which you can see. After his return to India, he published an interesting paper on Biography of Bird, which is regarded as ornithological classic till now. With no technological assistance, he relied upon his careful observations. He studied and analyzed the behavior of Biography of Bird, is worth mentioning. Then, after his return to India, Salim Ali started his first systematic survey in the state of Hyderabad with the financial support from princely state Hyderabad to meet the field expenses. Here I must tell you, here he took no salary for himself, is the point to be noted. Then that was followed by a similar surveys in the princely state of Cochin, Travancore, Gwalior, Indore, and Bhopal with a sponsorship from their rulers. During this survey, he got a regular advice and suggestions from his professor Erwin Stresemann and his ornithological friend Hugh Whistler, who was an English policeman. He spent a lot of time in the BNHS with its excellent library collections, with the collection of bird specimens as well. He spent a lot of times in BNHS library. And the photograph is the front view of BNHS library at present. Then, applying the bird ringing knowledge that he gained in Heligoland Bird Observatory in Germany, he conducted a large bird ringing programs across India, particularly in the Keladov National Park is worth mentioning. The KNP, then that time, it was the former duck hunting reserve for Maharajas. And the bird ringing effort showed Dr. Salim Ali and his team where the birds came from, including the white Siberian crane, which flew all the way from Russia, covering 6,000 kilometers. Now you can't see any more Siberian cranes, almost extinct. The race which is coming towards India, that is extinct. There is other that is a bit sad affair. And Kerala National Park is the India's major wintering area for a huge number of aquatic birds and one of the India's main bird watching center. Visitors all across the world used to come. But that different. We'll discuss about the site in a case study, how it is right now. Adam rightly said, the Book of Indian Birds by Salim Ali is the bestseller and inspired many people towards bird watching, including our late former Prime Minister Pandit Nehru and Srimati Indira Gandhi. The government of India awarded him with the highest civilian award, Padma Bhushan in 1958 and Padma Vibhushan in 1979. Apart from this, he got several awards, and particularly to mention, it's the J.T. Wildlife Conservation Prize is worth mentioning. And he donated this entire money for the Salim Ali Conservation Fund. Let us discuss, this is a brief biography of Salim Ali. Now let us discuss the importance of bird conservation. Why one wants to conservation of birds comes to mind. First, bird form an of ecosystem which we need for our own survival. Yes, our own survival depends on the birds, directly or indirectly. Forest, marine environment provide us food, medicine, and important. It keeps us climate stable, oxygenate air, transform pollutants into nutrients. So it is a great function. Secondly, birds play an important role in effective functioning of ecosystem. Bird watching and listening bird calls make people great inspiration for many measurement or quantification in any economical terms. It is way very beneficial, it's very economically, very valuable, even unestimatable, or a good indicator of a general state of a biodiversity and ecosystem. When birds starts to disappear, it means that something is wrong with our environment, that we need to take into action. Just like the birds and the ecosystems are like a shuffle of cards. What happens when the birds start disappearing is quite one can appreciate. Next, wetland birds, particularly the storks, are quite huge in size and highly visible in the environment, often easily noticed by the people. Maybe for the same reason, it is being connected well with communities, people, and even in many folklores across the world. Particularly the white storks and the woolly neck stork, which I showed in red color mark, or makes a solitary nest, while the open bill on the right side and the painted stork in the picture always make a colonial nest on a submerged treetops surrounded by water. These are the prominent big size birds which anybody can easily notice. Let us discuss about these birds in relation to the conservation aspects, conservation issues that we face. These birds, as I told you, it normally nest on a typical nesting pattern as shown in this slide. Such kind of nesting pattern you can see easily in Kerala National Park, Ranganathitta Bird Sanctuary, Delhi Zoo, Kokkrabellur, and Vedandangal Bird Sanctuary, which is area you can see, and Kundangalam Bird Sanctuary. And such a kind of wetland complex are essential. It is important to note that the wetland complex are highly interlinked with the nesting colonies, one with another. See the black dots, they represent the nesting site, while the green icons represent the surrounding wetlands. Even a slightest disturbance or a removal of any one of the wetland will have a direct effect on the very survival of nesting site. And exactly, probably, and this is the reason behind the positioning of nesting site by the birds according to the central place flower foraging theory. So the conservation of birds nest is well connected with the wetland, and it requires a holistic approach. Then conservation of birds on the ecosystem is always challenging, and each habitat, bird habitat, there's another big problem here is that each habitat needs a specific conservation measures. You cannot apply a single conservation measures all across the bird habit, though it is a bird habit, but each and every habit requires a different set of management and conservation measures. Play a vital role in the conservation of wetland birds and the ecosystem by looking at some case studies. The open-bill stocks in Ghanapur we'll see, Okla Barrage Bird Sanctuary, and again, we'll come back to the KND where Salim Ali did a good number of bird ringing programs. We'll see how this by with our study. The Ghanapur, yes, the military cantonment, which is about 5th from the capital city, Patna, Bihar. The area marked in yellow is the main cantonment area where the open bills are breeding in high densities. We have counted them. We have counted about 5,000 individuals in the nesting colony inside the cantonment area. And interestingly, the birds are breeding inside the cantonment. That is quite interesting to see. Now, if you ask me the question, why the birds are breeding only inside the cantonment area? The cantonment area, the blue, the cantonment area is marked in blue here in this slide because number one, the birds enjoy full protection by the military authorities. Secondly, the nesting site is close to the river Ganges and its tributary zone, which are shown as a white strips, and you can see the Son River down below, as I've shown the photograph of it, where there is an abundant supply of food material for this open-bill stocks. Open-bill stocks feeds on mollusks, particularly Pila globosa, and which is available plenty of things in the riverbed. Now you can appreciate the central place foraging theory which I discussed a bit above from this context. Why the birds choose this particular place? It requires an interconnected of wetlands and wetland plains, and then in a center place the bird starts breeding. Interestingly, in Dhanapur, it is not breeding on. It is breeding on a Ashokan tree. I showed you the red circle. The birds are breeding on a Ashoka tree, which you can see. I think it's visible. The photograph in the right corner. But it is quite strange and different from the normal colonial nesting habitats like the one we saw earlier. They're shown on the left. Normally, these colonial water birds prefer this kind of habitat, but here it is nesting on a tree. It is quite strange. The reason is, therefore, one can say it's clear that due to the protections and conservation measures taken by the authorities of military cantonment, which is a prime human factor that makes the breeding even possible. So this is a very clear example of how human positively can play a role in the conservation of the birds, and particularly the successful breeding of this particular bird. It's quite happening right now in front of you. If you can go to Patna, try to visit this place. It's an awesome, wonderful place to visit. Huge, tightly compacted breeding happening inside the cantonment. That's a positive thing. Positive human effort. Birds conservation of bird. Now let us see the second example. This is the problem I heard about. This is the Okla Barrage Bird Sanctuary. It is the area. This area requires different conservation measures. It's not only protections but also equally management seems very vital, because this entire area is surrounded by a huge number of people living around, and this particular thing faces different issues like livelihood issues of local communities, pollution, discharge of sewage waters, silt accumulations. There are so many several issues. So mere protection is not going to really helpful there. The management, active management of the authorities are essential to make appropriate conservation measures. And I must tell you, it is one of the largest stopover site of the thousands of migratory birds which comes across Delhi. So you can see thousands of birds sitting close to each other on this big wetland. Apart from this thing, it is a big reservoir. it gives a lot of water to the supply of Delhi. One such intervention. This is a different intervention is required here. Then the third one is national park. It is the park where Dr. Salim Ali did conduct a good number of bird ringing studies, which I shown you earlier. Now it is facing a water scarcity problem. The problems of KNP are quite different from the other two. You can see from the picture shown the abundance of bird life and water, and now both are really missing. This is also happening. Water problems are happening in a wetland near Puducherry's Vedandangal bird sanctuaries, where it is another area with a good number of density of colonial water birds. It is also facing the same way as what KNP water shortage issues is. We'll discuss how, and let us see some of the data that we have collected. Here we have collected about 17 years of data from 1992 to 2008. Of these, eight were major drought years, and birds failed to breed in all those years. Has always been inconsistent, and therefore there was a sharp decline in the population of nesting birds. Nest count, there's a clear reduction of nest count, you can see from the graph. And we conducted a bit of analysis, and which clearly shows that the previous year rainfall and the previous year water availability, not only the present year, but also the previous year, has a major role in nesting of heronry birds in this park, which is clearly shown in our analysis. So, though you may get a good number of good amount of water availability in the present year, but the previous is also very important. Previous rainfall as well as water availability decides the present day nesting activity, which is clearly from our studies. Now you can see how once is being supplied with by groundwater. I mean, pumping water from the ground. It's a very pathetic situation. With this bit of examples, let me stop. And each requires a different conservation measures, and it's not uniform. So the involvement of human being, I told you, it's very, very vital, and for the conservation of birds, duty to bring back the pristine glory of national park. Not only Kerala, even Vedandangal at some time. It requires consensus with farmers, and the political situation is very much needed to get the water for this parks. Will end up my talk here, and this fine bird I used to share. When the last tree is cut down, the last fish has been caught, only then you'll find the money cannot be eaten, by the Red Indian sayings. I think this has become true in many cases. Even in my own eyes, I'm seeing the problem faced in Vedandangal bird sanctuary and many other places. Water management is a big problem. Water is not a scarcity. Water management is a scarcity. Water management is a big issue, and that should be attended very seriously. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mahendran, sir, for your colorful pictures with the related information on these wetlands, birds, and about various wetland habitats in India. Thank you, sir. I request the participants, if you have any queries to the to our eminent speakers, you can just post some questions, or you can write it in a chat box also. So we'll wait for the few minutes for any queries from the participants.
All right, sir.
Dear participants, if you have any queries, please respond. Mahendra sir, I have one question, sir. It's really related to Steri,
Please, please,
because
please.
we are having one a greater wetland here in Ustu area,
Yeah, yeah,
where
yes,
already SECON has did
yeah,
published some documents is related to the
yeah,
ornithology also.
yeah, yes,
So
yes.
I have a
It,
doubt, sir, whether it should be like a periodic updation should be required, or it's something like a means once a day events, like one time if you are conducting a survey, is it enough, or we have to like a periodic? I mean, in case of periodicity, how long it may take, like 5 years or 10 years period, something like that, or
being in Puducherry, there are two important places that I would like to flag off. The one is the Vedandangal Bird Sanctuary, I told you, which is very, very near from Puducherry. It's about hardly an hour drive, which can reach there.
correct, correct,
And the birds there, also you can see the same birds in Ostery Lake. The Ostery Lake is the nesting, is the foraging place, whereas the one in Vedandangal is the nesting place, probably for the same bird. So,
okay,
and another thing in case of Ostery, which you asked, it is a very big foraging ground for a number of not only colonial water birds, for and also for the major waders, small waders.
okay,
And in fact, one of our study, they have even identified as, I'm not quite clear how it is true, but it was discussed by well with our research community that even a spoonbill sandpiper, which is highly threatened bird, which was sighted, and it's quite possible. There are enough areas near in Pondicherry where along the coastline there are it's possible. So again, a periodic monitoring and a regular attention, connecting the nesting site and the foraging site is quite interesting. That will make a lot of make things a big in a bigger fashion. So regular survey is essential. As I told you already, the why you want to really conserve the birds. I told you birds are a critical indicator of the ecosystem. If there is any
okay.
problem with the birds, then it means that there is a direct consequences to our system. So it is always worth investing on birds. If you're investing on a birds, it means that you're investing for yourself and your community in safe. And if you're conserving the wetlands, again, you see we are facing a lot of floods here in Chennai. Luckily, it's saved. And wetlands play a very important role in flood management, flood control. And the wetlands play an important role in the life history of the birds. And if there is a good number of birds around you, it means that your ecosystem in good health. To take care of this ecosystem, yes, regular monitoring, regular policy intervention if required is essential or essential.
So next time, if
And
SECON is planning to conduct such a services from our NVS, means from our NVS hub or from Puducherry, we will be providing some extensive support. So in case if there is any such proposal, is there means just kindly extend it to Puducherry also, sir.
that'll be a wonderful idea. I think somebody should take up these issues and monitoring the oyster wetland and nearby wetland. There are plenty of other wetlands.
Yeah, we have other like in
Uh,
Bahur tanks is there. It is also very larger tanks is
exactly,
available in Puducherry.
exactly.
So
These tanks are essential foraging ground for the colonial water birds. So,
okay,
okay, the birds require a separate site for nesting as well as foraging. So the interlinking of this thing is very important. That's what I shown in one of my slide. That connections are very essential. It is
so
not
we need to
isolated.
document it.
Yes, you
Uh,
need to document and keep a record of it. And you don't see the single wetland as such. It's not an isolated thing. It's all well
okay,
connected with the other
other water
ecosystems,
bodies.
other wetlands, other water bodies, as well as with the birds. So from that point of view, the holistic point is required, approach is required. And it's
So
definitely monitoring and management is absolutely essential.
So from our Puducherry Invest Center, we will always be in an extended support for this accounts. Like if any such things can be collaboratively work up.
I'll be happy
Okay, okay. So
to
I will get the administrative
participate
support
and
and let's see this.
yes, thank
So
you very
one
much.
more thing is my curiosity is that because all these wetland water birds is wetland birds is will forage their eggs on small shrubs or nearby what called the aquatic plants. So during the recent rains, what I found that the water levels in the Uzdu and nearby water tanks has been alarmingly increasing. Maybe in the past 2 to 3 days, as we are having here territorial the northeast monsoon. As a result, larger influx of water entering into the Dairy. So when such a rises will have any effect on these birds, because the eggs will be an normal on that it may be like flooded. So what they will be doing,
Yeah,
because birds can fly away, but the eggs all be just have
very
a
interesting
curiosity
questions.
of.
No, very, very interesting questions, and which is, I feel there is an interesting depth of natural history behind this, behind your question.
Okay.
The birds will always be intelligent, much more
Okay.
intelligent, which we are not taking for granted, and it definitely makes the right time to for breeding.
Okay.
Breeding of
Okay.
birds is not a joke. They take a lot of things into consideration, and they do the breeding. Breeding is a very big thing in birds, so they'll take all those factors into consideration. And here I'd like to flag off one important thing, that wetland, generally people have a tendency to see the wetland as full of water and greenery. That is
Mm.
not the case. Wetland has to go dry.
Mm-hmm.
That is the cycle of the wetland. It has to get dry so that there's a lot of wetland plants that can come up.
Okay.
It acts as a very good flood control, and it carries the water, no doubt. After some time in receding, water will recede. Water has to recede. So looking at wetland dry condition, it gives a lot of anthropogenic, some badness. But for the wetland, water as well as non-water is essential. I mean, waterless is also essential.
So
It's
it's a
equally
cycle.
essential.
It's a
It's
natural
a
cycle
cycle.
actually
It's
again.
a natural
Okay.
cycle. It's a very natural cycle. That one has to appreciate that as well. The dryness also. Drought is a very essential, very essential. But the drought, what I showed you in KNP, is all man-made drought. That has to be avoided.
Mm-hmm.
So when there is a water availability, the birds are going to come and breed in large numbers. Here, I'm telling you, there is no such machinery or available in anywhere in the world to convert a molluscan biomass to a bird, or a fish biomass to a bird. When you take away all the birds, then how this biomass is going to convert? Where the energy cycle will go up? And definitely, if you're not doing that thing, then it is going to have a havoc on the system. That's the energy will stagnate at one certain level. They'll have a different consequences. So the
Mm-hmm.
birds are doing a wonderful ecosystem service of converting molluscan biomass or fish biomass into bird, and it is keeping the cycle up in the ladder. It's free of cost. If you put in terms of economic values, it is run into several millions of rupees. So what we are investing in terms of conservation is very, very little. When if you look at the birds, what the birds are doing to us, that is a point to be noted. All the people have to take into consideration, whether
Sure.
they
Sure.
believe it or not.
Yeah, rightly pointed, sir.
The birds are doing amazing thing, ecosystem services, which we take granted many times.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your nice explanations, sir.
Thanks for putting these questions. As nobody is, I mean, generally people have a tendency to not
Okay, sir.
pose questions, but you raise a question. I'm really thankful to you
Okay, sir.
to
Okay, sir.
to
Okay,
bring
sir.
up this issue so that we can highlight. This is a platform. This is the day in which we can really show off all these things. No, it's good. Thank you very much for these good
Thank you so
questions.
much. We take this privilege to release a small posters we had made from our Envy Center about the Salim Malays. So we will be posting it in our all the social medias also.
Yeah.
We're just sharing the screen actually. So this is one of the posters on the we had made it for this day, and there is one infographics also, sir. So then now we will be moving to the Thanksgiving sections. I thank you, Dr. Mahendran sir, for your wonderful picturesque and infographics presentations of wetland birds and its conservations. And I would like to express my gratitude to all the participants for their keen participation in this webinar. I thank NV Secretariat for extending their support in conducting these webinars. I thank my secretary, Smita IAS, for her eminent guidance in conducting this such an event. I thank all my friends for supporting us. Thank you all. So now we are moving to the closing sections.